Imagine a city teetering on the edge, streets empty, skies burning, and the sound of fear echoing through every corner. A catastrophe was moments away from erasing it all. Homes, families, millions of lives. And yet, against the roar of destruction, a miracle happened. Not by chance, not by fate, but by the sheer, unwavering courage of someone you've never heard of. No medals, no headlines, just one ordinary man who refused to let his city fall. This isn't just another story of war. It's the story of a single heartbeat that defied the impossible. Because sometimes, one person really can change the course of history. It was the spring of 1944. The war had stretched across continents, swallowing cities whole. In Eastern Europe, where every sunrise meant another bombardment, the small city of Koel stood on the edge of annihilation. Caught between retreating German forces and advancing Soviet divisions, Koel was about to become a graveyard for tens of thousands of civilians. The city had no army left, no supplies, just shattered buildings and terrified souls praying for a miracle that never seemed to come. Until he appeared. His name was Lieutenant Josef Langer, a railway engineer by trade, not a soldier by birth. When chaos erupted, he didn't flee. Instead, he stood at the heart of a burning city and made a decision that would rewrite its fate. The Germans were preparing to demolish every bridge, every rail line, anything that could help the Soviets advance. But Koel's destruction would also mean the deaths of thousands of trapped civilians, families who couldn't escape. Langer saw what was coming, and he refused to let it happen. Armed with nothing more than a stolen rifle, a handful of grenades, and a mind sharpened by years of engineering, he transformed from builder to defender overnight. The German demolition team was ready to blow up the main rail bridge, the last lifeline of the city. Langer knew that if that bridge fell, the entire civilian population would be lost. It was their only way out. Under the cover of night, he crawled through the rubble, smoke biting into his lungs, the sky glowing red from distant fires. He'd memorized the German patrol schedules from overheard chatter and the faint light of burning warehouses. Every second was borrowed time. Every breath could have been his last. When he reached the bridge, he saw it. Explosives wired to every column, charges ready to detonate. The German officer in charge was already preparing to ignite the line. Langer aimed, waited, and fired. One shot, then another. The officer fell. Chaos broke out. The Germans fired blindly into the dark, unsure who was attacking. Langer didn't stop. He crawled closer, cutting wires, disarming charges one by one as bullets hissed past him. By dawn, when the smoke cleared, the bridge was still standing, scarred, damaged, but alive. The Germans, believing a full resistance force had ambushed them, retreated temporarily to regroup. They had no idea it had been one man. The civilians seized that moment. Word spread like wildfire. The bridge is safe. The bridge is still standing. Thousands rushed across it, carrying whatever they could. Women, children, elders, they moved through the morning fog while Langer covered them from the shadows. Each time the Germans tried to return, he'd strike from a different spot, creating the illusion of multiple defenders. He'd built fake firing positions using helmets on sticks, staged gunfire echoes by throwing small explosives in different directions. He wasn't just fighting with bullets, he was fighting with brains. By the end of that day, over 12,000 civilians had escaped. And still, the man behind it all didn't leave. He stayed behind to finish what he started. The Germans eventually discovered the truth, that there was no battalion, no armed unit, just one man. They launched a full assault. Tanks rolled in, mortars fell like rain. But for every explosion, Langer answered with silence, only to strike again when they least expected it. He moved like a ghost through the ruins, unseen, unstoppable. For 3 days and nights, he held the line alone. The Soviets, advancing from the east, began hearing whispers on their radios, a voice repeating coordinates, describing enemy positions with uncanny precision. It was Langer. Using a broken radio transmitter salvaged from a wrecked command post, he guided Soviet artillery toward the German flanks, all while hiding inside a collapsed tram station. The Soviets thought they were receiving intel from a surviving resistance group. They didn't know it was just one man. But even heroes have limits. By the fourth night, exhaustion began to take its toll. His ammunition was running low, his voice, cracked and faint, still echoed through the transmitter. They're moving south. Target the tanks first. He knew it was the end. But his mission wasn't survival. It was time. Every second he held out meant another convoy reaching safety, and he wasn't about to let that time run out. As dawn broke, the Germans finally breached the outer edge of the city. Flames consumed everything. Langer, wounded and barely conscious, detonated his last grenade near the bridge entrance, not to destroy it, but to block the German advance. It was a desperate act of defiance, one final statement that the city would not fall quietly. When Soviet troops entered Koel hours later, they found the bridge still standing. Around it lay the wreckage of battle, and, near the riverbank, the lifeless body of a man in a torn engineer's uniform. His hands were burned, his rifle empty, but beside him was the transmitter, still humming faintly. They didn't know his name, not then. To them, he was simply the lone defender. The Soviets would later restore the bridge, unaware of the man who had saved it. The refugees who escaped through it spoke of him as a legend, a shadow who appeared when all hope was gone. For decades, his story remained buried under the rubble of history, unrecorded, unacknowledged. But in 1991, when archives finally opened, his name surfaced again, Lieutenant Josef Langer, the man who had saved a city alone.
The air was thick with smoke. The sky, once blue, had turned into a haunting canvas of gray and red. The city trembled under the distant thunder of advancing forces, and yet, in that chaos, one man stood, tired, bruised, but unbroken. He had already done what no one thought possible. The explosives he'd redirected had detonated miles away, creating the illusion that the city was already destroyed. The enemy, deceived by the towering plumes of smoke, halted their advance, convinced that no one was left alive to save. But the man knew it wasn't over. The fire was spreading faster than anyone could control. With communication lines down and the army still days away, he had to rely on instinct, courage, and whatever little strength remained. He climbed the highest bell tower still standing and surveyed the chaos below. Every street he looked at had a memory. Every building had once been filled with laughter, markets, music, life. Now all of it was ash and flame. And yet, he refused to let it all vanish. Somewhere deep within, he found the strength to continue. Gathering a handful of survivors, men, women, even children, he formed an impromptu rescue group. They weren't soldiers, they were bakers, teachers, and farmers. But under his leadership, they became the last line of defense between the city and total ruin. For 3 sleepless days, they battled not enemies, but time itself. They built makeshift fire breaks, diverted rivers to stop the flames, and carried the wounded through streets that burned hotter than hell. And through it all, he never stopped moving. Not once. Word of his actions spread beyond the broken city walls. Nearby villages, hearing of a man who refused to give up, began sending help. Supplies trickled in. Reinforcements arrived. The fire that was meant to destroy everything was finally extinguished. When the military finally returned, they found the city, damaged, scarred, but still standing. The commanders couldn't believe it. They asked who had saved it. The survivors pointed to him, but he was gone. Some say he vanished into the hills, unable to bear the spotlight. Others claim he died quietly among the ruins he had saved, never seeking recognition. His name was recorded in no official report. His face was never shown in newspapers. But among those who lived because of him, he became more than a man. He became a legend whispered through generations. Years later, when the war ended and the city rebuilt, an old wall still bore the faint marks of his handprints, blackened with soot, pressed against stone during those desperate nights. It became a sacred reminder that even when the world collapses, one person's courage can hold it together. So when we talk about heroes, we often imagine medals, uniforms, and grand ceremonies. But this story isn't about any of that. It's about the silent heroism of a man who stood against the impossible and won. Because sometimes, true heroism doesn't echo through history books. It lives quietly in the hearts of those who remember. And though the world may never know his name, his city will never forget.